In the Impact segment tonight, the GOP candidates out on the campaign trail trying to make a dent in Donald Trump's huge lead. For Governor Scott Walker, that meant attacking President Obama's Iran deal while touting his own national security bona fides.
See, unlike others, I don't need months or years to mull this over. I don't need to appoint a cabinet or consult a committee. Anybody who doesn't know today that the Iran deal is a bad deal is not ready to be commander-in-chief. I am ready to be commander-in-chief on day one.
They're also attacking Trump's policy proposals. With us now with more from Washington, D.C., Carl Cameron, Fox News chief political correspondent. Carl, how's the GOP feel dealing with Trump's dominance in the polls?
A lot of them are frustrated. A lot of them are trying to stay away from him. In the case of Ted Cruz, trying to embrace him. Chris Christie says he's a friend, but he doesn't necessarily agree with him. Jeb Bush today, in his event in Norfolk near the naval station, talking about vets, said it really isn't helpful to be calling somebody stupid or idiots, said that it doesn't offer anything relevant to any of the nation's problems and is counterproductive, and that was aimed squarely at Mr. Trump. Scott Walker today said he doesn't share the view that all the American leaders are corrupt and incompetent losers. Walker did also slam Bush. You know, that line a minute ago about having to consult cabinet leaders and others before deciding if the Iran nuke deal is a good or a bad one was aimed really at Jeb, who actually said that you might want to consider talking to your cabinet before just sort of an abject objection to it. And that was during the process where the details of the deal were just being resolved. So they're hitting back and forth. It's a question of, do you take on somebody like that? And obviously, Jeb Bush has been trying to do that, and Trump had a great week.
You're right. So these candidates have to figure out, do they take on Trump in this, this big ship that's moving along, that's steaming along, or do you develop your own policy and put those out there? Now, Scott Walker wanted to hit on some foreign policy.
Sure.
What's the right answer? I mean, if I'm a viewer and I'm watching, I know what Trump has, and we know that. I want to hear some specifics from Chris Christie, from Scott Walker, from Rand Paul.
Well, and so do people want to hear specifics from Mr. Trump. The reality is Trump continues to have huge crowds. He was out in Dubuque earlier this week. I was out there. 4,000 people. He had a great turnout. Lots of people from Wisconsin, which is a threat to the governor of Wisconsin, Dubuque being right on the border there. And Trump hit it out of the park repeatedly. And one of the things that's clear is that Jeb has decided that he's got to go after Mr. Trump. That was the same day that the whole Jorge Ramos flare-up with Trump took place. But 2 days later, the Quinnipiac poll comes out and shows that Trump has got a bigger lead than anybody else has ever had in the entire year. He's got organizers on the ground in Iowa. The people in his crowds in Iowa, the first caucus state, and in New Hampshire, increasingly are the real early primary voters. Now, it is still way too early to worry about polls and stuff like that in those early states. Folks don't make up their minds until the last week. But the fact that Trump's getting the activists in these early states is a very, very scary sign for people like Jeb Bush, John Kasich, and others who are looking at the early states first. Trump is able to go into Alabama and get 20,000, and in Iowa and New Hampshire he can get 5,000 or 6,000, and that's very, very rare.
But it's not. It may be too early for worrying about where the votes are coming from, but it's not too early to worry about the money. Now, the big donors, what do they want to see their guy, the Rubio donors, the Jeb Bush donors, the Chris Christie donors? What do they want to see their guy do? Or in the case of Carly Fiorina, their gal, do? They want to see them take on Trump or to develop their own campaign?
Well, there's a huge gamble in that. Developing one's own campaign in the shadow of Trump means you could just disappear into relative obscurity. There's another debate coming up in 3 weeks, 3 weeks from yesterday, as a matter of fact. It may be the last time it's a two-tiered debate. We could see the rest of the debates maybe being whittled considerably, particularly if Trump is holding virtually the rest of the field in single digits and he's in the high 20s. So he can't be treated as an unserious candidate. Jeb's doing exactly that. What the donors want is essentially people to call him out and talk about specifics, but he has proven himself a masterful speech maker with rhetoric that doesn't have a lot of substance to it. And truth be told, Eric, this early in the process, in August, when folks aren't paying attention, it'll kick up after Labor Day, and Labor Day comes late this year. But to put down a major white paper policy is very, very risky. If you talk about the economics of things now, with the way things have been on the markets and the way the numbers in the government change every couple of reports, the ground will shift under your feet as soon as you put out a policy. So Trump arguably is pretty cagey as a politician by talking about sort of half-expressed, very emotional rhetoric and getting people to sort of all hone in on what he's trying to say, but not literally saying in a journalistic sense or anything that causes you to say, oh, there's a campaign promise he's going to have a hard time keeping.
Right.
He doesn't do that.
Well, so you say it's very risky to put a policy proposal on paper right now because it's so early. However, the longer they wait, Trump continues to widen the gap between him and the rest of the field. I'm an athlete. We're losing the game. Granted, it's still the second quarter of the game.
That's the
but we got to
history
change our game plan, don't we?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you look back over the history, the candidates who've had leads at this point, which is just about the same time the Ames straw poll used to happen, everybody who won the straw poll, with the exception of George W. Bush in 2000, didn't get the nomination. So the people who were always sort of really hot right now tend to run the risk of either getting too high to the sun and burning out.
Was it a money thing for a lot of them?
No, it's being sometimes too familiar with the early voters. Don't forget that Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, they are a cantankerous bunch. Iowa will vote for one person. New Hampshire, just for the hell of it, will vote for somebody else to keep it real.
Carl, Trump alluded to that at that speech that you were at, that you spoke of earlier. He said that. He said, I'm leading right now, but I want to win. So he's starting to think, is this too early to be peaking? He may change his strategy.
His rhetoric has gotten tighter. He has set pieces that he'll talk about, whether it's China is killing us or why he thinks that Mexico is killing us or what he would do about business inversions or this sort of thing. He draws on them and keeps it fresh by putting the pieces in different order and ad-libbing all the time. But fundamentally, there is a political speech there that, while it might be not so rich on details, people are eating it up with a shovel.
Right. Carl, great stuff. Thank you.